So now we're doing the midpoint formula. So we're still in 2.1, and the midpoint just means the middle. So if I have a line segment that's 10 units long, if I cut it in half, 5 and 5, this is the middle. That is the midpoint. So how do we find the midpoint? Well, you just divide the line into two parts. So what we do is we find the average of the x values and the average of the y values. Well, what's average? Well, for example, if you have two tests and you get 80% on the first test, test 1, and test 2, you get 95. The average of these marks would be 80 plus 95 divided by 2. So 80 plus 95 equals divided by 2 equals 87.5. So your average for those tests, oops, my curtain. The average for those tests is 87.5. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to find the average. Close my curtain there. We find the average and we find the average. Okay, so here's my 2 points. I'm going to take my x values, okay, and I'm going to add them together. So -2 plus 5, divide by 2, because there's 2 tests, we divide by 2. There's 2 points, I divide by 2. And then I go, okay, that's 5 plus negative, that's 3 over 2, which equals 1.5. So that's my x value, because I was playing with my x's. Now I'm going to find my y value. So I'm going to add them together. 1 plus 4. Divide by 2, because I have 2 points. And that's my y value. So I just add them together, divide by 2. That's the average. Okay, so let's look here at some examples. So it says find the midpoint of the line segment CD. Okay, so the midpoint. So let's put brackets here for the point. Well, because it's the same as the y axis, it's vertical, this x value is going to be the same no matter where it is on this line. So I know my x value is going to be -2, so I don't have to do any work with that side because all of these points start with x -2. I just have to do my y value. So I'm going to take my y values and I'm going to add them. Divide by 2. Oh, so there is, I found the average. There's my y value for my midpoint. So let's check. -2 up 1. That's the midpoint of this line. Okay, so now it says find the midpoint of the line segment AB. Okay, so now that this line is horizontal, just like the x-axis, you can see that the y value is going to be 3 for all of the points along here. So if I want to find my midpoint, I know the y value is going to be 3. I don't have to do anything with it. And now I just have to look at the x values. 1 plus 5 divided by 2. So then I know it's 3. The x value is 3. Let's check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's the midpoint. Okay. Let's look at another example. Now this line is not horizontal and it's not vertical. It's oblique, which means I have to do both sets of points. So let's first do the x value, okay, for the midpoint. So all I do is I take the x values, 2 plus 8 divided by 2, and that equals 10 divided by 2, and that equals 5. So the midpoint for the x value, the coordinate for the x value is going to be 5. So now let's do the y's. 1 plus 3 over 2, 2. There. So this is now the midpoint for this line. So let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. There's the midpoint. Okay. So now it says use the formula to find the midpoint between these 2 points. Well, the formula is exactly the same. They just want you to calculate it nicely together so it looks kind of pretty. So that's the example of using the formula. Let's do it here. And we got to use the formula. So my midpoint of this and this, first I take my x values, because remember, x always comes first. So I'm going to do my x values. Let's move it so you can see. So this is the formula. So I'm going to take the x values and add them together. 3 plus negative 9 divided by 2, comma. Now I'm going to do the y values. 20 plus negative 16 over 2. So now this is going to be negative 6 over 2. This is going to be 4 over 2. That's negative 3. And that's 2. So the midpoint between these 2 points is this. So I'm doing the same thing with the formula, but now I'm just doing it in a more structured way between brackets with a comma in between. That's my midpoint. Okay. So let's find the midpoint of these points, but using the formula. So that just means use some brackets and a comma. So I'm going to add the x values. So 300 plus 8.5 over 2. 8. Now we're going to do the y values. 8 plus 36 over 2. Now we're just going to put big brackets, comma. That's 308.5 over 2. And that's going to be 44 over 2. And if I take half of this, it's going to be 154.25. Half of that is 22. So I found the midpoint using the formula, but I don't really have to think of using the formula, because if you remember just finding the average, like average between two tests, just find the average of the x, find the average of the y, bloop, 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 and find your answer. And that's the midpoint. The middle between, like if you have a line, the midpoint is the middle point. Okay?